All right, Mayor, I have 6:05 p.m.
Sounds good. All right, we'll call our virtual public information workshop for October 19th, 2023. This is on the Chaine annexation. I want to welcome everybody to this meeting. It's a very nice and informal opportunity for residents as well as those from Chaine who are interested in potentially becoming residents of the town of Windermere to learn a little bit more about our town, the staff, and some of the information about how a potential annexation will work moving forward. So I just want to, again, just welcome everyone, and I'll take this opportunity to kick it back over to our town manager, Robert Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, the format for tonight is going to be, we'll start off with Wade Trim, Brad Cornelius, who's our planning consultant. He'll go over the procedures for annexation. Then I'll speak on what direct impact it has to the residents of Chaine. And then we'll kick it off to Chief Ogden, and then we'll open it for Q&A. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Brad Cornelius. That'll go over the procedures on how to annex in and what rights you have as residents as such. So with that said, Brad.
All right, thanks, Robert. Again, as Robert said, my name is Brad Cornelius with Wade Trim, and I serve as the contracted town planner. So yeah, I'll just give you some information about annexation and how this works. So the first slide, as y'all know, Chaine. The community includes both an HOA part as well as a non-HOA part, but it's part of the overall community. It's adjacent to the town of Windermere, to the where the town sits to the east. And again, you're 103 acres, there's 74 parcels, there's 51 single-family homes there based on the property appraiser records. And under the county, it has a zoning RS1 and rural estate, which is where you sit today. So just that's the area that we're going to be talking about this evening. Next, please. So in terms of an annexation and how this occurs, this is really governed by a state law on how this happens. And in Florida, there's two primary ways that annexation occurs. So the first way an annexation could occur would be what's called a voluntary annexation. And that's where a property owner would request and petition the town to annex the property into the community. So that's a process where the property owner says, I want to come in. The town would go through a process. Town council would have to approve it or deny it to be annexed in. And that would be a voluntary annexation. This other way to do it is called an involuntary annexation. And this is one where you don't have to have all the property owners to agree to annex in, but this is one where the town would go through the annexation process, doing the analysis related to what that impact would be if it would be annexed into the property, and also coordination with Orange County as part of that. But the big difference between these two is on an involuntary annexation, it requires a referendum, meaning it requires a vote of the area, of the voters, registered voters of the area that is being proposed for annexation. And that vote has to pass by a simple majority of votes that are cast, for that election. The town council is not required to do this, but they have the option, if the town council would want to do this, is they could also put this to a vote to the existing residents of the town of Windermere. Again, it's not required, but it is an option if the town council would wish to do something like that. The most recent information we have about registered voters in Chaine, I believe there was 106 registered voters in that area. And that was from July of this year. So that's the way those two processes work. Next, please. So for Chaine, if this were to move forward, this would have to go through the involuntary annexation and the referendum process, because like I said, otherwise we would have to have every single property owner in that area agree to be annexed into the town, which I'm not sure that would occur. So because of that, to move forward through the process, one of the things the town wants to get a sense of, is it a feasible idea, and would there be support within the area of annexation? So what has been discussed is to get an idea if there is support, is to get 51% of the property owners within the Chaine du Lac area to provide a petition to the town saying, yes, they do support the annexation, just so the town would have a sense of whether or not there would be support for it. Because there is cost to the town to go through that process, and that's part of why that's there. And so that's the process, and I already hit the other two. It will be involuntary, and again, there is the option that there could be the two votes, one in Chaine du Lac in the town, if that were to occur. Next, please. One of what we have to do as a town as well, as this moves forward, or if this moves forward, is we just have to assure it meets the statutory requirements for annexation under Florida law, which is under 171. And it's pretty straightforward. We have to make sure that it's adjacent to the town, which it is. We also have to make sure that it's what the statute calls compact and doesn't create like enclaves or pockets or long stretches of linear kind of annexations, and just making sure that it is a defined area and we don't leave any holes that are still unincorporated is a big part of that. And this Chaine du Lac area, looking at it preliminary, to us very clearly meets all those criteria that it would have to meet under the statute to be annexed if it were to move forward. Next, please. Some other statute requirements, again, which is not a concern that looking at this annexation area, we have to just show that it is an area that's developed for urban purposes. This, as we all know, this is already a developed residential area, so it does meet that criteria. There's no real concern at all about whether it's compliant with this or not, because it is. Just so folks know why this is in statute, it helps to discourage local governments or cities and counties to annex in undeveloped large areas of land for future development. They want to focus on areas that are already developed, and that's what Chaine du Lac is. So we do meet that. So we believe that fully meets that statutory requirement as well. Next, please. What would happen if this would be to annex into the town, and that would be to approved in terms of the comprehensive plan and zoning regulations, is the county regulations would stay in effect until the town would update the town's comprehensive plan and land development. The comprehensive plan and also land development code amendments would be required to incorporate it into Chaine du Lac into the town's regulatory system. So that would be the process, and that would actually, if it would be annexation, that process would go along pretty much at the same time or right after the annexation. So it wouldn't be a long period of where the town would not make that adjustment. Also, what's important is the town's code already provides for this, is that in the part of Chaine du Lac that there's already an approved plan development, a development agreement already plan approved under Orange County, that the town's code says that the town still would comply and utilize those regulations that were already in place with the subdivision already as part of the development agreement. So for the areas of Chaine du Lac that are under a development agreement that have the criteria for development, that would not change if you would be annexed into the town. For the other areas of Chaine du Lac that aren't part of that development agreement, what the town code also requires for annexation is when it comes into the town, it would be zoned as a planned unit development with its own agreement, development agreement or annexation agreement, where we would also address development standards for the area, looking at what's currently under Orange County and seeing how that complies with town requirements, and if there would be areas that would need to be changed to address specific issues within Chaine du Lac. That could be something proposed as part of that agreement, that then the town council, when they would go through the hearings to decide to approve or not to approve the PUD, would make that determination if they would accept those changes or not. So there is a mechanism to minimize the amount of changes in terms of the regulatory part that Chaine du Lac is subject to, because your community is basically a built-out community there. Next, please. In terms of a timeline, this is rough because it definitely can be affected by other issues, but generally, for the annexation part of it, once the town has the comfort that the town council needs, if they want to move forward with the annexation, it's about a 90 to 120 day process in terms of getting an analysis done, doing the required ordinances that need to be done to set up the referendum, the vote, and then the referendum. So it's about a 3 to 4 month process, roughly. It could be longer and shorter, but that's a good estimate there. Next, please. Then once that occurs, as I said earlier, then we would go through the comprehensive plan change and the zoning change, and that would be another 60 to 90 days, again, just depending on the specifics of what would be in there, to get to the point where Chaine du Lac is fully integrated into the town, and all the development issues and standards are resolved, and you're 100% part of the town of Windermere if that were to occur. So that's another 90 days. So you're looking between the two, about 6 months or so, 6, 8, 9 months total to go through that process potentially. Next, please. And now what I'll do, turn it over to Robert, and he'll talk more about the administrative side of the impacts of annexation.
Thanks, Brad. And I can attest that not only if and when you annex into the town of Windermere, do you get direct access to your council members, but also the staff. And Brad is very responsive to any and all questions that come up. A little bit of background: a lot of people, when the town was looking at annexing in various HOAs, one of them was Isleworth. There was some pushback from, I think it was Mayor Crotty at the time, which can date you how long ago it was. So the town had a charrette or a planning session to identify areas where annexation made sense. Either they already felt or knew that they were part of the town, or they want to be a part of the town. And it was a win-win for both the town of Windermere and also for the residents of that particular area. So the town went through that charrette system and came out with some identified areas. And this was in response to, I believe, the northwest corner of Conroe, Windermere, and Apopka Vineland. But Chaine du Lac has always been an area to where the town felt it would be, again, a win-win, not only for the residents, but for the town of Windermere for annexation. So the responsibilities between the town and the HOA, again, our intent is to not ruffle any feathers, is to make everything pretty much seamless. The town would accept whatever existing agreement there is or the plat that is with Orange County. The HOA would still be responsible for everything the HOA is responsible for. And the town would memorialize this in an annexation agreement. So everybody knows what is in the agreement prior to any type of vote. So who's responsible for sidewalks, common areas, stormwater, roads, streetlights, that all be memorialized in that annexation agreement. The big thing that I know a lot of the residents of Chaine du Lac have a concern about is solid waste. So currently the town of Windermere contracts with Waste Pro. We operate 2 times a week. So we have Tuesdays and Fridays. That's our solid waste pickup. We also do recycling 1 time a week on Tuesdays. And then we have yard waste on 1 day a week, which is Wednesdays. We also have white goods that are picked up. I think we're allowed 2 a year. for each residence. So you just notify Waste Pro when you're going to have those white goods out there, meaning like a fridge, a freezer, a toilet, something like that, at no charge. But if you're used to one time a week, you can pretty much sympathize with the fact that, you know, if there's one skipped route, meaning if there's a holiday on that day or a storm, that twice a week really comes in handy. And the financial impact is really de minimis to the level of service that you'll get with the Town of Windermere. Fire service protection and EMS. So this is one of the big items of contention back when the Town of Windermere is looking at annexing in some of the HOAs and also Isleworth. So the agreement that is made between the Town of Windermere and the COE is the Town of Windermere does not have fire or EMS. So we pay for that service from a COE through an assessment. And that's 0.8 mils. And I'll get into the millage and so on and so forth. But the agreement that a COE has with Orange County is called an automatic aid. And the basic of that is you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. In the South Windermere area, Orange County has more fire stations. In the North Orange County area, COE has more fire stations. So instead of them developing more fire stations and adding more resources, they utilize those other jurisdictions for their automatic aid. That's different than mutual aid, which you typically hear about, which is if something really bad happens, like multiple fires within the town or just adjacent to the town, then all hands on deck. Everybody will respond to that no matter what. But with automatic aid, it's a little bit different. Currently, again, it's 0.8 mils for the Town of Windermere, but we're looking at reducing that to 0.7 mils. And I'll let you know how that'll impact your, if you should annex into the Town of Windermere, your overall cost from annexing in. We just transferred over to EMS with the COE because they typically were the first responders when they showed up. And I'll let Chief get into as far as the emergency management system relative to the police department when we get there. So politics, you're not missing or losing anything. You're actually gaining an overlay pretty much. Right now, you're in Orange County. So you have a District 1 commissioner, and then you have the mayor and the other commissioners, and then make decisions for the entire county. So when it comes to more local decisions, you know, you're at the whim of those jurisdictions. This makes you a part of that jurisdiction. So if you're looking at, you know, wanting to have additions made to Windermere Road and McGuire, you can have that direct impact on your elected officials. If you had issues with Park Avenue, Lake Butler Boulevard, the school, this gives you more of a direct input to your local jurisdiction than if you were just within Orange County. We've taken every call and, you know, concern that we've received from Shonda Locke over the last few years as if you were residents anyway. I know that Zach is a part of the HOA, not the HOA, but part of the Shonda Locke development. And one of the issues that we had recently was the development across the street was having the irrigation shoot over the sidewalk, and it was flooding the sidewalk to the kids where to have to cross over Park Avenue. Well, we reached out directly to the property management company, and then we had them try to change their irrigation times to where the kids were able to not cross, but walk safely along Park Avenue to get to Windermere Elementary School. So you'll still have votes in Orange County. So you still get to vote for Orange County mayor, the sheriff, District 1 commissioner, stuff like that. But you have the extra layer to where you can vote on local municipal elections. And you have direct access to local leaders and staff. Pretty much anybody on here knows that they have my cell phone number. Most of them have Chief's cell phone number as well, and Tanya's. If a helicopter is flying overhead, we get text messages and we make sure that we get that information out there of what's going on, so we can relieve some of the emails and phone calls that we'll get the next day. But you have direct access to a 2.2 square mile, 3,000 resident community, as opposed to the entire county. And some of the added benefits that you get would be you get boat ramp access, which is at Fernwood and Bessie. Fernwood is going to be the big one that gets you to the Butler Chaine. Tennis courts, you get Main Street and then Windermere Recreation Center. You'll be eligible for resident-only events, discounts on town hall. You can send them visit various, boards and committees that have direct impact on recommendations to town council for what's going to happen within town. And then one of the big things that I've heard from some of the residents of Chaine is disaster recovery. We have been the first, I believe, within Orange County for the last 3 storms that have come through to file everything with FEMA and also have everything cleaned up with a short amount of time, because again, we're focused on a small 2.2 square mile area. I believe this area that we're looking to annex in of Chaine would add about probably about 0.4 to 0.5 square miles, which is not a huge impact to the town of Windermere. And you'll get the same type of service that we give to everybody else. And will this diminish any of the level of service that the current residents have? No. As I said before, this is a win-win. The town of Windermere would not have to add one additional staff member for this annexation, meaning that we wouldn't have to add a police officer, we wouldn't have to add public works, and you're getting that increased level of service for this community because, again, it's compact, it's gated, it's adjacent to the town, and it pretty much seems like you guys are actually a part of the town of Windermere already. Financial impact. I hate to sound like a salesman, but if we were to keep everything exactly the same, the financial impact would be about $375 a year. So what you would do is you take the assessed value of your home, divide it by 1,000, and then multiply it by 3.7425 mils. And that would give you how much you would pay the town of Windermere. In comparison, as far as taxes, the town of Windermere is the lowest in Orange County. If you look at your tax bill, you can see that Department of Education, Orange County Schools, they're going to take the biggest part of your taxes. The town of Windermere will take the least amount. And if the town of Windermere looks to reduce the amount of fire assessment for next year, that range drops down between $150 to $275 a year. And again, remember, you're getting 2 times a week solid waste and then increased response time from the Windermere Police Department. So that price increase is offset by the amount of benefits that you would see. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Chief Ogden to go over the benefits of the Windermere Police Department, and then we'll be happy to open up for questions after that.
Thanks, Robert. I'll be pretty quick. I think I already know a lot of residents in Chaine, so welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Dave Ogden. I've been with the Windermere Police Department as their chief for 10 years, but I've also been in law enforcement for 37 years. So prior to that, I spent 27 years at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, and I think what's important to this discussion is I spent 3 of those years in charge as a captain in what's called Sector 3, which is the sector that right now where you get your services. So I think I'm kind of uniquely qualified to talk about the services that we offer in law enforcement specifically, some of the complaints. Love the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I retired from there. They're an awesome agency. But until I came to the town of Windermere, I never really truly understood what a level of service the police department could offer, which is what we do, and I'm proud of that. We are a small agency. We've only got 14 full-time officers, but we have 21 altogether in reserves. I have a lot of retired, very experienced police officers from the sheriff's office and other places who want to continue on a part-time basis. And they come over as a retired, and they volunteer their time and their services, but they bring a lot of skill and talent to our agency. We're happy about that. I think one of the biggest things that we offer in our level of service is a response time. And our response time is 3 minutes across the board, whether that's an emergency code for service or a non-emergency code for service. And I can tell you, when I was at the sheriff's office, our average times, non-emergency times in Chandelloc, because I did know these stats there, was anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour and a half, possibly even longer. We know in an emergency situation, when minutes count, it's important to know that your public safety may only be 40 minutes to an hour away, and that's pretty significant. In addition to that response time for law enforcement, we kind of have the unique opportunity here is that we actually respond to all of our medical calls. And you might kind of wonder, well, why would that be important, Chief? And that's because all of our officers are not only CIT trained, crisis trained, they're also CPR trained. We also carry AEDs. And several times we are the first person on the scene, maybe up to 5 or 10 minutes even before a fire department can get there. And we've deployed the AED on a pretty regular basis. And our officers have received lots of rewards and accolades for saving lives. Matter of fact, we just did one Saturday at the 5-10K run. Unfortunately, a runner went down. We were so fortunate that a local resident who was a doctor was there, began CPR, and immediately we had an AED on the scene. The AED was deployed, actually activated, and brought the individual back to life. So that is a benefit that I don't think you can put a price tag on. Our communications with our agency, whether it's through the town app, and whether you're a resident or not, I encourage you to be on the town app, because I know a lot of you already attend food truck and all the special events, the 5K, our foundation events, and you're engaged with that, which is, I think, why we're even here having this conversation to begin with, because you're already pretty much a part of the town of Windermere. But I think through our social media sites and the Windermere Safety Watch, which you probably don't get, which is meant for the town residents, which is a direct message from me on a regular basis on any crime trends, patterns, or things that go on. I will tell you, it was just probably, I don't know if Zach is on the call here, but Zach and I have known each other for probably 25 years. But I think it was about 6 months ago, the sheriff's office had some burglaries that were occurring just outside of your complex there. And nobody knew what was going on. I got a text from Zach. I was actually on vacation, I think in Colorado at the time, but that really doesn't matter to me. That's the kind of life I understand I've signed up for, but we're responsive to that. And I shared immediately what was going on, which would kind of quell some of the stress that's going on when you see helicopters flying on above, and sheriff's office and Windermere police officers running around our facilities. So that's the kind of level of service that you will get. I think it's amazing. Some people ask me, it's a direct asset. Some people will ask me this, well, Chief, what about something really, really bad happens? And this is not to pat myself on the back or toot my own horn, but I've been in this line of work for a long time. At the sheriff's office, I was one of what's called a high-risk incident commander, which means I handled all hostage situation, barricaded gunmen, and things of that nature. And I also sit on a regional domestic security task force. You may not even know what that is or aware of it, but it's a task force, and I'm assigned as the law enforcement liaison. So I am keenly aware of what all resources and mutual aid response that are in there that we can use, that we may use, and that in fact we've used in the past. So what I'm telling you, in an emergency situation, your response is going to be just as great, just as expound as any agency here, because we all share those regional asset resources. Whether it's the large agency that has the helicopter or a SWAT van, most of those are actually purchased with regional assets. And every resident in Orange County, and every city, and every municipality has equal access to the majority of those items. And I'm very familiar with that protocol. So with that, I'll kind of turn it back over to Mr. Smith, and I think he's going to ask some questions. Do you have any questions of me? I'd be glad to answer them.
Chief, can you compare the level of service between Sector 3 versus the Town of Windermere relative to burglaries, minor crimes, the detectives that we have, so on and so forth? Sorry about my dog barking.
Yeah, not a problem. Obviously, listen, we have a very low crime rate. We're not immune to crime. We know we've had some very significant crimes in town on occasion, and that's unfortunate. Nobody's immune to crime. I think we're seeing that in overall society. One of the interesting things we did is, as when I took office over here 10 years ago, is we brought some of the highest level of investigators and employees over to our department. Detective John Allen is still a reserve officer. We do have Detective Mark Allen that's aboard as well. But we brought people over with 30 years of experience that were assigned homicide cases, death cases, child abuse, sex crimes, you name it. All the kind of services that you can imagine are most highly qualified and trained. And the unique thing about that is we don't have a lot of crimes, but when we do have a crime, whether it's a car burglary or anything else, we work it like it's a homicide. And that's my direction to them, because that's a level of service that we are blessed to be able to do. And I say blessed because as a Sector 3 captain, when I had a CID detective that was under me, it was not uncommon for them to have 200 burglaries in their file in 1 month. Nobody can handle 200 burglaries. No detective over there tries to handle 200 burglaries. They wouldn't even try to tell you that they do that. It's just an impossibility. Out of those 200 burglaries, if there's a couple that have some kind of a workable crime trend or information, that's the ones that are going to work, and the rest are really just going to go into the file. And so again, no matter what kind of crime it is, if it's a burglary or a car burglary or something serious, it is going to get worked like the most important crime that we ever have, because it's the most important thing to us. And that, again, once again, is a level of service that we can provide.
Thank you, Chief. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, did you talk about accreditation?
Sorry, I did forget about that. Yes, you guys, I'm sure you've been by the facility. We got a brand new facility last year. We were waiting for that for a couple of years to ascertain our accreditation measures. And what accreditation means is that we have an outside entity that be in the state of Florida that comes in every 3 years and does a full assessment of our agency from head to top, from top to bottom rather. And that is from our policies, our procedures. They actually interview our officers. They look at our vehicles to make sure that we have everything. They look in our evidence room. And last year, actually it's this year, we received the accreditation. Last year we went through the process, but we are a fully accredited agency. You should know this too. There's only about 45% of the agencies that are accredited in the entire state of Florida. And most of those are the large agencies, not smaller agencies like ours. And I will once again brag on our officers and our citizens, our civilians that help us in accreditation, because former Deputy Chief Jennifer Treadwell stayed aboard as a civilian part-time, just here and there to make sure we get accredited. But we not only received accreditation, we got the highest accolade, which was told by us by 3 of them as we received the accreditation, and Mr. Smith was there and our mayor was there, is that we were 100% in compliance. There wasn't another agency there getting reaccredited or accredited that was 100% in compliance, that we did not have anything that we needed to correct. So very proud of our personnel for doing that.
Thank you, Chief. And with that said, I'll open up to any questions. You can raise your virtual hand and or type it in the chat box. Again, this is public information workshop. There's no official action to be taken tonight, but we can answer any and all questions that you may have relative to annexation, what's going on in town, so on and so forth. So I'll open it up. And don't be shy. We're here for you.
We either put everybody to sleep or we answered all the questions.
Frank Krenz.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So as far as, from a kind of selfish position, anything we annex dilutes it seems to me, dilutes the control, the power, the whatever that downtown Windermere has, the original 1 square mile or whatever it was. How much of that would, what would be the dilution percentage with this annexation?
Thank you for the question. I don't believe it would dilute anything based on the amount of residents that would be annexed in, and Brad has that number. But mind you, there's the Manors, Marina Bay, the Willows, Estancia, and I believe over the last 11 years that I've been with the town of Windermere, I believe 3 council members have been elected from those HOAs. Again, it's about serving. It's not about any compensation, obviously, but they would be a part of that local conversation relative to local situations. And again, we wouldn't look at a certain area unless it was a win-win, meaning that in all transparency, the town of Windermere would be looking at adding about $400,000 worth of tax revenue from annexing in this one little jurisdiction. And that would assist the town on moving forward with various projects relative to either transportation, multimodal, or potable water systems. And I see Brad's on, so he can answer the question as far as how many actual people that live in Chaine would be eligible for voting.
Yeah, in terms of the actual voting, based on the information received from the supervisor of elections, and I did not get the number for the total town of Windermere registered voters, but within Chaine it's approximately, I think it was 106 registered voters. And if I do just an estimate of population based on an average household size from the census and the number of dwelling units out there, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 112 to 115 or so residents total in that, just from an estimate based on that. And if, comparing that to the total town population of a little bit over 3,030, that's about a little bit less than a 4% increase in the town's population based on those numbers. So as Robert said, it's not a significant increase or change in the population.
I think it's also very important to note that when you just decide to serve as an elected official, that in our town, in our community, we serve the entire town and the entire community. And whether you live in an HOA or whether you don't live in an HOA, we're charged with making sure that we do what benefits the community to the fullest degree, no matter what. When we've had several individuals from HOA communities on the council, they serve the exact same way. Together we're better. We continue to bring more talent, and certainly we can use more talent. We need additional and want additional people to serve and step up to benefit the entire town. And I think that's what makes us better. We've remained true to the mantra of downtown, but also there's no issue with those other communities being true to themselves as well, and making sure that they have the type of neighborhood that they enjoy and like. And I think that's key.
Thank you.
Well said, Mayor. Frank, any other questions?
No, that's it.
Thank you, Frank. All right. Next one would be Greg Anderson.
Hey guys, just a quick question on, and I was looking at the map there, and if you said it, I apologize for missing it. Does Chaine have any public facilities that the existing town of Windermere residents would have access to?
No.
Okay.
It is a self-contained development. So they'd be responsible for anything that's internal, just like any other gated community.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That was my question.
Yeah, sorry if I'm skipping up a little bit, but I want to give you a visual
Okay.
of what you were talking about.
Of course, Greg, we're open to accepting all docs for, common use.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that did come up was, the HOA versus the individual properties that were purchased prior to the HOA becoming part of it. Each of those properties would still be underneath the guise of the developer's agreement. So whatever's allowed now, unless there's some sort of change or, difference in opinion relative to the HOA versus the private property owners, we would make sure that everything remains exactly the same.
Okay.
So when you bought the home yesterday, it's not going to change tomorrow. So that was one of the things, again, we want to make sure it's a win-win for both parties. So thank you, Greg.
Yep.
Additional questions? So we have, there we go. I was about to call you on, Kathy. Take a look here. This will increase the amount of people using tennis courts and boat ramp, and they are already crowded. Also, sorry.
Can you read my writing?
I'm trying to. It's hard being an admin and doing this. Our down pet, and also the outlying residents always vote for change for our downtown because they don't directly affect them. We find this is not a win-win. Understood. This will add, and we understand that there are some offsets, which would be more people that get access to the tennis courts, that get access to the boat ramp. But staff would see this as a de minimis impact. Especially,
you're asking for my input. That's my input. I'm going to play tennis all the time, and they're already difficult to get a court between all the pros and everything. So you're adding another 125 residents going to be using the courts, that as well as the boat ramps. So that's one of my issues about it. I don't see how it doesn't really help me, but that's just my input.
understood.
Thank you,
Kathy. I really appreciate your input.
Okay.
Again, no input is negative input or bad input. It's always positive. So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input. All right. We got another hand raised. Let me see who it's from.
It's Frank.
Oh, Frank.
Yeah, I'm looking at that map. So the lakefront lots are not part of the annexation? Am I reading it right?
They are part of the annexation. You have to be contiguous and you can't create enclaves. So they would be part of the annexation. They're just not part of the developers agreement with Orange County.
Right, they're not part of the HOA, and that's why we shaded them differently. That's correct.
Okay, so the map is a little confusing because the yellow highlight says annexation area and the other part doesn't.
Yeah, this is not in Shonda, which is part of the HOA, but we're looking at the possibility of annexing the area that is both shaded and yellow.
It is shaded yellow. Okay, I see. Sorry.
Yes, sir. No worries, Frank. Okay. Other questions, concerns? Again, this is being recorded, so you can share it with your neighbors, your friends, and let people know if they have any questions, concerns about what's going on in town. Frank, I will lower your hand. Thank you, Vinny.
I
All
have
right.
Robert, if I could.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'd raised my hand, but just getting on the laptop from my phone. So, so regarding like the process from this point forward, because honestly, I've had a few people asking me questions about it, but unfortunately I missed most of the meeting. So, so if, after this workshop is done, is it going to go to a town council workshop before it would go to a vote, or is it going to go on the?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll go to town council on October 24th, I believe, which is going to be next Tuesday. And then after that, it would go to town council in November. And then there would be an election set shortly thereafter.
Okay.
And Brandy, if you want
Thank
me,
you.
if you want to call me, I can, give you the full process if you missed the beginning. So just give me a call and I can update you.
Yeah, the entire layout of timing and statutory requirements are within the presentation, which is part of the agenda.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know it was on YouTube, so I watched part of it from the other day already, but I didn't get to finish it. So it was dancing here.
No problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions, concerns? Frank, you got
Yep,
your hand up
one
again?
more. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I don't
sorry,
see a
bud.
lot of folks from Chaine du Lac on the call. Has there been, what about the other session? Has there been much expressed interest or disinterest?
Yes, we've had, I think this is probably the 4th or 5th meeting that we've had. This one includes the entire town of Windermere, relative to any of the issues that people have seen as far as the possibility of annexing in Chaine du Lac. But we've had both meetings with the HOA and with the residents as far as public input meetings with them. And there seems to be a lot of positivity. Like, we wouldn't move forward with any annexation unless we knew that there was a super majority relative to annexing into the town of Windermere. You don't want to bring in somebody kicking and screaming. I do that every time when I try to give my son a bath or something like that. But what we want to do is make sure that, number one, it's a win-win, whether you agree with that or not. And number two, that it is a positive experience for everybody, because you don't want that to be something that's going to be a black eye either for the town, Chaine du Lac, or the town of Windermere. That's why I think town council identified this area as a possibility for annexation probably about 5 years ago.
Do you have a sense that generally the population is paying attention, or is there a group going to come out of the woodwork at the last minute and say, we don't want that?
Frank, I have no idea what you're talking about as far as that ever happening in the town of Windermere. But there's always that possibility. But based on the response we've had from the residents, and we've notified every resident within the Chaine du Lac area, not only the HOA, but also the residents that are not part of the HOA, about these meetings. And the super majority have been positive. I really haven't seen any negatives. There's been questions of, the what ifs, can the town increase taxes? Of course. But I would just point to our record as far as our non-tax increases, to show that we're not that type of community. But I believe that this is a compact, natural progression for the town of Windermere, for us to expand a little bit, gain some more residents, and gain some more tax revenues, which would offset any costs that would have to possibly be impacted by the greater town.
Okay, thank you. I personally, very much appreciate the process that you're going through and the attention you give it and the thoroughness. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank. And again, Frank can probably attest that he probably has my cell phone number and Chief's cell phone number, that if anything happens, they text us, and we're more than happy to respond immediately.
I feel it's my duty to pester you half to death.
Thank you, Frank. Is there any additional questions, concerns?
You said that one part was some non-Chaine du Lac people technically. Were they also at the earlier workshops with the Chaine du Lac people?
Yes.
And they were for it as well?
Yes, it's Chaine du Lac as a community. It's kind of like, was it Windermere Reserve, to where a portion of it was developed in Orange County prior to it being platted as a private community. So you have the north and south. so the lakefront lots were developed prior to the HOA. So it's all considered Shondellock annexation area. So we would still need the 51% in order to annex in that entire area.
Okay,
Marina Bay is similar as well, Brandy.
okay,
And Robert, what I'll do, I'll update this map because for the discussion on the overall annexation, that breakout between the two really isn't critical. It'll be critical if this moves forward and, how we do the annexation agreement with the different issues, just to make sure, it's very clear on the area for annexation. So I'll make that update to the map for that.
Thank you, Brad.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions?
I don't have any other questions about this, but if you have a minute at the end, I would like to ask a question about my intersection when this is over.
All right. Well, Tanya and I can hold on after this. So any other questions relative to the proposed Shondellock annexation area? If not, I will thank you all for attending tonight. I know it's a Thursday night. We have about an hour before the president speaks, but I just want to thank you for attending. And then please feel free to make sure that you share the YouTube video to your friends, neighbors, family relative to this subject matter, just so we can get the word out. Because again, we have to defer to a lot of the residents to make sure that the information gets out there, even though we do posts, we do apps. Word of mouth is probably the biggest thing that can help us out with some of these things, and hopefully reconcile some of the misinformation that may be going out there, which there hasn't been much. So with that said, I will stop recording, and thank you very much, and enjoy your Thursday and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks all.
Thank you.